Hi there, I'm Andy Nairn. I'm one of the founders of the creative agency Lucky Generals. We've got clients like Amazon and the Co-op and Yorkshire Tea, who are all big believers in the power of radio advertising. But the reason I'm here today actually is to talk about a book that I've just launched called Go Luck Yourself. Now don't worry, despite the fact that there is probably now a large picture of the book looming onto your screen, I'm not going to hard sell you on it. I just want to really talk about the general theme of the book, which is that we can all improve the odds of success for our brands, even in these difficult times. And because it's Radio Centre, and I love radio and I love music, I'm going to rope in a little bit of help from some of the greats of the music industry. So I'm going to start with Dolly Parton. And as I'm sure lots of you will know, Dolly is an absolute legend of the country music world. In particular, she's had 44 top 10 country albums. She's recorded thousands of songs. She's an Emmy-nominated actor. She's got a business empire that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And actually last year, she even contributed to the funding of one of the successful coronavirus vaccines. So she's a pretty amazing person across so many different fields. And I think what is particularly wonderful about Dolly, though, is she's achieved all of that while being very true to her roots and actually playing up to her roots. So she often says that even the best Dolly jokes, the best ones, were made up by her herself. So she says things like, I'm just like the girl next door if you live next door to an amusement park. Or she says, I'm not offended by all the dumb blonde jokes because I know that I'm not dumb. And I also know that I'm not blonde either. Anyway, you get the picture. She's very self-deprecating but incredibly self-confident too. And she's got this lovely mantra which she uses to sum up that kind of advice and advice that she gives to other people, which is find out who you are and do it on purpose. Find out who you are and do it on purpose. I think that is the best ever advice to anyone who is running a brand. And I think in particular, in these more difficult times, it really makes sense because in an era of change, if you have a really clear sense of your identity and where you're going and what you need to be doing on a daily basis, then it's much easier to adjust to change than if you're scrabbling around trying to work that out for the first time. And in my almost 30 years, terrifyingly, of working with brands all over the world, I find that this is often the thing that companies struggle with. They don't maybe appreciate who they are. They don't appreciate all the wonderful things that they already have at their disposal. They don't realise they're sitting on an amazing goldmine of perhaps their history is fantastic, or they come from somewhere amazing. They've got a great provenance story, or they're sitting on a pile of data, or they have amazing brand characters or a visual identity that they've never exploited before, or an amazing sonic identity. Perhaps even just have an amazing name that they've never done anything with before. But very often it's true what Roald Dahl once said, which is that we're all a great deal luckier than we realise. And my first bit of advice then would be to build on that and to build on what Dolly has said and to find out who you are and then do it on purpose. And I think that will stand you in good stead in these difficult times, and actually is even more important now than ever. So the second person I want to talk about is Tom Waits. Now, Tom Waits is a little bit different from Dolly in that he's less of a commercial artist, but he's had amazing acclaim critically. And perhaps the main reason why he's been so well respected is he's got a very eclectic way of working. So he's excelled in folk music, but also in jazz, blues, rock and roll, and actually more experimental genres. And one of the ways he achieves that is fascinating from our point of view because he uses radios. He takes two radios and he switches them on both at the same time, but on different stations. Now, I'm sure Radio Centre would love this strategy because it would immediately double listening figures overnight. But Tom Waits likes it for a different reason. He likes it because it makes him aware of different collisions or potential interesting collaborations between melodies or harmonies or styles or genres or even lyrics. And then he takes this kind of these disparate influences, mashes them together and creates something new as a result. Now, I think the best creativity across all sorts of different fields, not just in our world, but also in the world of science and sport and so many other fields, takes elements from one place and mixes it and moulds it with another one. And I think that the difficulty is in these uncertain times, we're often much more heads down. We concentrate on the task at hand. We think about our own industry or perhaps our own company and even our own department, and we're less attuned to the world outside. And I think that's a terrible mistake because we're missing out on all those amazing happy accidents that could be going on all around us. So my second piece of advice is to be really aware of some of the stuff that's going on your peripheral vision in other sectors, in other fields like art, music, sport, religion, politics, psychology, economics, and use those influences to make your day job better. So, like Tom Waits, you got to switch on all those signals and make sure that your antennae are finely tuned to picking up new and interesting collisions of ideas. Now, the third person I want to talk about is the wonderful and incomparable Beyonce, and in particular her smash hit album Lemonade from, I think it was 2016. And the interesting thing about this album, I mean, it was a huge commercial success, sold millions of records, also a massive critical success, but it was born out of something terrible. It was Beyonce's discovery of the infidelities of her husband. And so literally she took lemons that life had dealt her and she literally created lemonade. And I think the big lesson for us as marketers is very often bad luck, or what appears to be bad luck at the time, can be turned into good luck if you have the right attitude. And I think about lots of brands at the moment who have managed to play a good hand during the current crisis. But then I also look back at previous crises like KFC and how they managed to turn their supply chain fiasco on its head and actually turn that into a success story for themselves by acknowledging the fact that it was a bit of a fuck up.
The chicken shortage, which has forced KFC to close hundreds of its outlets in the UK, is our next story. The fast food giant blaming teething problems with a new delivery contract.
So they agreed to deliver chicken without having a distribution centre.
They had a distribution centre, but it wasn't up and running.
All the chicken, there's farmers, surely there's enough chicken.
Really am disappointed. I'm mad at KFC.
I've had to go to Burger King.
They cleverly flipped their initials KFC to be FCK, and we all liked them a little bit more for doing that. I also look at brands who are competing in worlds where there's a taboo in the sector. Traditionally that would be considered a very unlucky thing to have a taboo that no one dare speak about in your sector. But a brand like Bodyform has taken that and taboos about how we feel about women's bodies and about menstruation and celebrated those things and made them wonderful, glorious things to be shared and talked about. Or even just a product flaw. Lots of products have things that are perhaps seen as disadvantages, but some of the best strategies have been turning those things on their head. I think of Guinness, for instance, and that fantastic strategy to take the fact that the pint takes a little bit longer to pour and to turn that into an advantage, because it's all about anticipation and the idea that good things come to those who wait. And when I look back at all, or certainly many of the great strategies over the years, they've often had that kind of sentiment at their heart. They've taken a negative thing or a challenge, a problem, a frustration, a limitation, and turned it into something good. So my third piece of advice would be to perhaps go back to the things that are bugging you at the moment and the things that you think are unfortunate on your behalf, and see whether you can turn them on their heads and turn them into really good, interesting, exciting, positive strategies for your brand. Now, the fourth and final person I think we can learn from is Quincy Jones, who's probably the best and most famous producer of all times. And he's had, I think, a record 80 Grammy nominations. He's had 7 Oscar nominations too, and sold hundreds of millions of records, including the best-selling album of all time, which is Michael Jackson's Thriller, which they recorded together in 1982. Now, the interesting thing about Quincy Jones is he's actually, in some ways, quite a methodological person. So he's very process-driven and has a certain science to the way that he works. But he also realises that he's got to leave room for the magic to happen too. And it's a combination that makes him so successful. And he sums that up with a great slogan, which is, "Let the Lord walk through the room." And he's got that pinned up on his recording studio wall. Let the Lord walk through the room. And I think that is fantastic advice for anyone in marketing too. It was at the heart of the success of Thriller, actually. So lots of lucky coincidences combined to make that a smash hit. It wasn't even supposed to be about horror movies until a chance conversation revealed that that was one of Michael Jackson's favourite subjects. So originally it was going to be called Starlight, but they changed the name to Thriller. And then another chance experiment really was to use Vincent Price, the aging retired horror movie actor, as a spoken word voiceover at the end of the lead song. And then a third lucky break was to use Eddie Van Halen on a rock number, eventually became Beat It. It wasn't on the original list of songs to go on the album. It was quite an unusual thing. Eddie Van Halen didn't believe Quincy Jones when he called him about it. He thought he was being pranked, and it took 5 phone calls to convince him. But anyway, all these lucky coincidences, lucky conversations, chance experiments combined to create this amazing best-selling album. And I think that's the nub of really what I've got to say today, and perhaps what the book has got to say, which is that luck is a good thing. Luck in life is a wonderful force if we can increase it. And a lot of our processes in the marketing industry these days, especially because it's a difficult time, are designed almost to reduce luck and minimise it, to keep the Lord locked out of the room rather than to let the Lord walk through the room. And I think that's a real shame. I think we need to do the opposite. I think that the times are so uncertain these days that we need to do everything we possibly can to maximise our chances of doing luck. And I think we can do that through a whole number of ways, but for the purposes of today, we can do it by finding out who we are and doing it on purpose, like Dolly Parton. And we can keep our antennae tuned for opportunities, like Tom Waits. We can turn lemons into lemonade, like Beyonce, and we can let the Lord walk through the room, like Quincy Jones. And anyway, I hope that's given you a few interesting things to think about. If you do like it, you can buy the book at all the usual places, and actually all the royalties go to an organisation called Commercial Break, which gives working class kids a lucky break into our industry. But either way, I hope that was useful, and go luck yourself.